By my mom. She'll feed me. I promise, whispered the little alien girl to the human. The orbital siege had ended, but Varelli's 3 still hadn't healed. A cratered world on the edge of human space. Its cities were now broken shells, silent factories, wrecked orbital lifts, skeletal buildings turned into shelters for the desperate. Dust storms rolled through like ghosts. Electricity flickered, food was rationed, and law was nothing but a memory. In the chaos, old trades returned. Things no one admitted existed, but everyone knew did. Mark Tavins had learned to navigate the ruins. 32. Human. Former planetary surveyor turned scavenger after the siege decimated his crew. Not a hero, not a fighter, just a man who knew how to survive, how to keep moving, keep breathing, and keep his conscience quiet when necessary. His mission today was simple. Find a replacement stabilizer coil for his atmosphere processor before the next acid storm hit. No part, no shelter. The trade hub he entered wasn't a real market, just an open-air lot jam between collapsed cargo modules, tarps strung overhead, broken neon signs buzzing with half-lit alien script. Underfoot, oil and rain formed slick puddles across the uneven plating. The stench of fuel, mold, and burnt meat lingered in the air. Vendors lined the walkways, selling everything from spare parts to salvaged water purifiers. A few stalls went darker, offering drugs, weapons, sometimes company. Mark ignored them. His boots moved with purpose, eyes scanning stalls, voice silent. He didn't trust this place. Then he felt it. A small tug, barely noticeable. He turned. A girl stood behind him. Small, maybe 5 or 6, humanoid, but clearly alien. Her skin is soft, muted lavender, stretched too tightly over her tiny frame. Thin arms, bare feet. Wet silver hair clung to her face in strands. Her eyes glowed faint cyan under the tarp's dim lighting. Too large for her face, too quiet for a child. She looked up at him. By my mom, she whispered. She'll feed me. I promise. Mark froze. He didn't understand at first. Then his eyes tracked past her, toward a metal platform lit by a spotlight. A woman knelt there, shackled, arms behind her back, her legs tucked neatly beneath her. She was the Ray, an alien race Mark had only read about in scattered reports. Tall, lithe, mauve-toned skin like the girl's, though bruised and marked by cold. Her hair was long and silver, unevenly braided. Her face was striking, sharply defined, eyes slightly upturned with glowing cyan irises. Despite her situation, she wasn't slumped. Her back remained straight, jaw set. She didn't glance at Mark, didn't beg. Her clothes were more ceremonial than practical. What was left of them? A bandeau across her chest, once silk-like, now worn thin, with a few threads unraveling at the edges. A split skirt hung from her hips, connected by bronze rings that no longer shone. Her ribs were visible. She hadn't eaten properly in days, maybe longer. The slaver standing beside her, broad, human, patched coat, half his teeth gone, noticed Mark's hesitation. He grinned. She yours? He asked. Cute, ain't she? Still warm. Not broken in. She's a breeder, this one. Quiet. Doesn't fight anymore. Mark didn't respond. He looked at the girl. Her face hadn't changed. No tears. No pleading. Just calm desperation. He squatted beside her. What's your name? Allery. You hungry? She nodded slowly. Mark swallowed. His hand moved on instinct, not logic, resting on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. She looked like she hadn't been touched gently in a long time. He stood and stepped toward the platform. Selah, the woman, watched him now. Eyes steady, not grateful, just watching. How much? The slaver raised a brow. The woman. Both. Her and the girl. He chuckled. They're a package now? You got a soft spot, or you just like the family look? Mark didn't rise to it. He pulled a worn cred chip from his jacket and held it up. Enough to buy a weapon, or a month's food, or freedom, if you were willing to look the other way. The slaver took it without counting. He'd made a profit. Chains off, Mark said flatly. The slaver hesitated, then removed the cuffs. Selah stood on her own, slowly. Unsteady, Mark offered a hand. She looked at it for a moment before accepting. Her palm was cold, bones prominent, but she held his grip firmly as she stepped down. Allery rushed to her. Sayla dropped to one knee and embraced her daughter tightly, pressing her face into the child's hair. Mark watched, unsure of what he'd just done. He hadn't planned this. He hadn't come here for people. He just couldn't walk away. They didn't thank him. He didn't expect them to. "Come on," he said quietly. They followed him, Sayla with her arm around Allery's shoulders, her posture still proud despite the bruises. Mark led them through side alleys and back tunnels to where his hauler sat behind a pile of crushed scaffolding. The ramp creaked as it lowered. Inside was dim, cluttered, and cold, but safe. He pointed to a corner with an old mattress and thermal blankets. "Rest here." Sayla guided Allery down. The girl curled up instantly, face buried in the blanket. Mark returned with 2 ration packs and a water flask. He handed one to Sayla. She opened it with shaking fingers, but instead of eating, she tore the bar in half and gave the larger piece to Allery. Mark watched. He didn't say anything. Sayla finally looked at him. Her voice was low, steady. "Why did you do it?" Mark hesitated. "I don't know." A long silence settled between them. The ship's engine ticked in the cooling air. "You're human," she said. "So are you," he replied. Her eyes softened just slightly. "Not everyone sees it that way." "I do." That was all. Sayla leaned back, her hand resting on Allery's small frame. Her daughter had already fallen asleep. Mark turned off the lights and walked to the cockpit. He sat down, stared out at the scorched horizon, and tried to make sense of what came next. He didn't know their full story, didn't know what danger this choice would bring. But in that moment, he knew one thing. He had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't regret it. The hauler hummed softly in the cold silence. Outside, the storm pressed against the hull like a restless hand, dust and grit scraping against metal. Inside, the lights were low. Mark sat in the cockpit, staring at the half-dead console. He'd rerouted power to heat and life support. The old system protested with blinking warnings, but it held, for now. He wasn't thinking about the stabilizer coil anymore. He'd told himself it was just a quick trip. Get in, find the part, trade, leave. But that plan collapsed the second Allery tugged his sleeve. Now he had 2 passengers, one of them a child, the other a woman who hadn't even told him her name. He glanced down the narrow hall that led to the cargo bay. They were still there, quiet. He stood and walked back. The space was cramped and dimly lit, lined with crates, tool racks, folded tarps. He saw Allery first, wrapped in a thermal blanket, curled on the mattress. She was asleep, mouth slightly open, fingers gripping the edge of the fabric like it might disappear. Next to her sat the woman. Her back was against the wall, legs folded beneath her, one arm draped protectively over her daughter. Her other hand was resting in her lap, holding a half-eaten protein bar. She hadn't touched it further. Mark stopped a few steps away. She looked up at him. No surprise in her eyes, just the same quiet alertness. "I'm Mark," he said. A pause. Then her voice, smooth, deliberate, low. "Sayla." He nodded. "Your people. You're the Ray." She gave the faintest nod. "What's left of us? How long were you on the market?" Her eyes didn't change. 5 days in that stall. Before that, 3 months in transit. And before that, in a holding camp. Mark shifted his weight. "Why didn't anyone else take you?" "They don't buy the Ray anymore," she said. "Too many rules. Too much baggage. They think we're dangerous. Complicated." He frowned. "Because of the empathy?" "Yes." He didn't press further, but a question lingered. "Why sell yourself at all?" She looked down at her daughter. "Because she was starving." Her fingers brushed Allery's hair. "And because they wouldn't feed her unless I made myself valuable." Mark exhaled through his nose, jaw tight. He understood. Not in full, not with the same weight, but enough. "She said you'd feed her." "I always did, until I couldn't." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Set a new ration pack near her. "You can eat now. You're safe." Her head tilted. "You say that like it means something here." "It does. With me." That earned him a longer look. Still cautious, but not dismissive. Her eyes scanned his face like she was reading the space between his words. "Where are you taking us?" He shrugged. Nowhere. Not yet. I don't have a plan. You didn't buy us for a plan? No. Another silence stretched out. The hum of the hauler. The wind outside. Allery's faint breathing. You could sell me back, she said flatly. Someone would pay. I won't. Then why? Mark hesitated. He didn't have a clean answer. He sat down across from her, resting his back against a cargo crate. The cold floor seeped through his jacket. I saw a child in a war zone ask a stranger to save her mother. That doesn't happen unless things are broken. I just couldn't ignore it. Sayla didn't smile, but something softened around her eyes. I'm not a burden, she said. I didn't say you were. She glanced at the ceiling, as if remembering something distant. Before the siege, we lived on the upper terraces. Gardens, temples, sky-glass domes. Allery was born there. She looked back down. Then the skies turned black. The people changed, and my name stopped mattering. Mark watched her. No pity in his gaze. Just attention. You don't have to tell me everything now. I'm not telling you for you. I'm telling you because I need to say it out loud again. I need to remember who I was before they made me forget. She set the ration aside and shifted to check on Allery, who stirred faintly in her sleep but didn't wake. Mark stood. Rest. We'll move out in the morning. Where? Outskirts. There's a freighter wreck in the northern basin. It's old, but it's quiet. No patrols. We can hide there for a while. Sayla didn't protest. She nodded once and leaned back. Mark turned away, but before he reached the cockpit, her voice stopped him. You said you don't have a plan. I don't. She hesitated. Then maybe that's safer than the people who do. He didn't reply, just kept walking. In the cockpit, he sank into the pilot's seat and stared out at the black horizon. He should have just walked away, found the coil, gone home. But something about the way Sayla had looked at him, that quiet strength behind the hunger, the way she'd stayed proud, even in chains, it stuck in his chest like a lodged piece of shrapnel. And the girl? By my mom. He closed his eyes. This wasn't his war anymore. But maybe it didn't need to be a war to be worth fighting. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a dull, yellow haze that clung low over the horizon. The sky above Varelli's 3 was never clear anymore, just layers of pollution and storm fallout stretching as far as the eye could see. The hauler's hull was coated in fine dust, already beginning to corrode around the seams. Mark stood at the back of the ship, loading fuel cells and packing what little food remained. They couldn't stay here. He had told Sayla about the wreck in the basin, but he hadn't explained why he knew about it. It had been a survey site once, one of the last runs he'd made before the siege, when Varelli's was still a functioning colony. The freighter, an old array long hauler, had gone down decades ago, hidden in a crevice. No one bothered scavenging it because it was rumored to be cursed or haunted, depending on who you asked. Mark didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in quiet places. Inside the hauler, Sayla knelt beside her daughter, dressing Allery in a warmer shirt from Mark's storage compartment. It was too big for her, sleeves hanging well past her wrists, but it was clean, dry. Allery tugged at the fabric and looked up at her mother. Is this ours now? Sayla paused, then answered carefully. It's his. He's just letting us use it. The child nodded, then whispered, he's not scary. Sayla didn't reply, not because she disagreed, but because that simple sentence hit harder than she expected. Mark entered, slinging a travel pack over his shoulder. We'll need to move on foot once we reach the canyon shelf. The wreck isn't accessible by air. Sayla stood, adjusting the side of her skirt. How long? About 2 hours walk. If we go slow. He handed her a canteen and a ration bar. Eat first. She accepted both without argument. The air between them had shifted, still cautious, but no longer cold. They moved like people beginning to understand each other. Not fully, but enough. As they exited the hauler, the child held Sayla's hand, and Mark kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. The tray hub was behind them now, out of sight, but that didn't mean they were safe. He had been seen. Buying a Ray woman was not an anonymous act, especially one as visibly unbroken as Sayla. They moved across the broken flats quietly. No one spoke unless necessary. Sayla didn't ask about his past, but she studied him as they walked. She noted the way he moved, careful but not paranoid. His weapon was close, but never drawn. He looked at people like someone who had lost trust, not someone who enjoyed power. Allery asked the first real question. Why are you helping us? Mark didn't answer right away. Because you needed help. But lots of people needed help. No one helped us before. He looked down at her. Maybe they were scared. Allery blinked. Are you scared? Mark paused. Sometimes. But not of you. Sayla glanced at him from the corner of her eye, but said nothing. By midday, they reached the basin rim. The wind was dry here, sharp, cutting across the canyon like a blade. Below lay the husk of the Ray freighter, half buried in the rock. Its once sleek hull was now blackened and dented, streaked with sand. Mark climbed down first, using a narrow ledge carved by old erosion. He tested every step before waving for Sayla and Allery to follow. The child moved carefully, aided by her mother's grip. Inside the wreck, the light changed. Soft, filtered, almost tinted blue through the fractured glass panels. Dust particles floated through the stale air. It was quiet, unnaturally so. No wind, no birds, no machines. Mark pushed open a warped hatch and entered the main corridor. It had once been ceremonial, clearly not a military vessel. Symbols adorned the walls, glowing faintly with residual power. This belonged to your people, he said. Sayla stepped past him slowly, running her fingers over the ray script. It was a seed ship, she said, built to find and prepare new colonies. We believed in growing, not conquering. She entered a wide chamber at the center of the ship. It had once been a meditation room, now just open space with fractured glass along one wall. This will work, Mark said, at least for now. He began unloading supplies, blankets, tools, emergency light sources. Allery explored the chamber quietly, fingers brushing over polished stone. After some time, Sayla approached. You knew this was here. I worked planetary surveys. Saw this years ago. Never thought I'd need it. She stood close now, not intentionally, but without distance. You've done more than enough. We won't stay long. He met her eyes. You don't need to say that. She tilted her head slightly. Why not? Because I didn't save you to feel owed. I just didn't want to leave you behind. Sayla studied him in silence, then sat beside him on a bent metal platform. There's something you should understand, she said quietly. The Ray were bred for connection. Not just reproduction, emotional depth. We were used for it, controlled for it. Mark didn't look away. I know some of it. Not all. I was bonded once, she said. Before the siege. He was killed when our temple fell. I haven't touched anyone since. He didn't speak. Let the moment sit. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, she added. I just need you to understand that if I seem distant, it's not because I'm broken. It's because I remember what it felt like to be whole. Mark nodded slowly. You don't owe me your past, but I'm giving it to you anyway. They sat in silence again, comfortable for the first time. From across the room, Allery called out, pointing to a symbol carved in the wall. What does that one mean? Sayla stood, walked over. She traced the lines with her fingers. It means shelter, a place that holds you. Allery looked at her. Are we staying here? Sayla looked back at Mark. For a moment, she didn't seem like someone who'd been in chains 2 days ago. She seemed like someone deciding her future. Yes, she said. For now, this is shelter. Mark didn't know what would come next. But for the first time since the siege, he allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd all found something more than just a hiding place. Maybe they'd found the beginning of something else. The wind outside howled against the fractured hull of the ancient Ray freighter, but inside, everything remained still. The blue glow of the old wall panels barely reached the far corners of the room. Mark sat near the main corridor entrance, rifle within arm's reach, his back against the wall. He hadn't fully slept. Couldn't. Not with the unease creeping up his spine. Something had shifted. 2 days had passed since they took shelter here. Enough time to unpack, patch holes, scavenge working lights from side deck. Enough time to start feeling like the place was theirs. But Mark knew better. Safety on Varelli's was temporary. From a chamber where the child slept, faint movement. Sayla walked out barefoot, her silhouette lit from behind. She wore one of Mark's old field shirts, long enough to reach her upper thighs, sleeves rolled up. Her hair was down now, loose and soft around her shoulders. She hadn't said much the day before, just worked silently, helping him secure the outer doors, boiling water with a portable unit. But something had been different in her body language. Less guarded, less tense. She noticed his alert posture. "You haven't rested," she said. "Didn't feel right to." "Something's wrong." Mark nodded barely. Someone was watching from the ridge this morning. A scout drone. Military grade or maybe private security. Not local. Sayla walked to him and sat beside him, slow and quiet. She didn't react with fear, just tension measured. "They're tracking us? They're looking for something. Could be anyone, but my gut says they were tracing your signature." She was silent for a few moments. Then, almost too softly, the ray emit an emotional pulse. "Some species can trace it, especially if we're bonded or afraid." Mark turned to look at her. "Are you afraid now?" "No," she said. "Not right now." She rested her hands on her knees. Her nails had been cracked when he first met her. They were healing now. Small signs. He studied her in the silence. There was a new calm in her. A quiet, focused strength. "You said you were bonded once," Mark said, voice low. "Is it something that can happen again?" She looked straight at him, unblinking. "Yes, but it's not something we do like a ritual. It's something we become, slowly, through choice, proximity, trust." He looked away. "And if it happens, then the bond is permanent. Not ownership, not power, just alignment of thought, feeling, memory. It can't be faked, and it can't be taken back." Mark didn't answer. He wasn't afraid of commitment, but the weight of something like that, after all he'd seen, all he'd lost, it scared him more than he wanted to admit. She must have sensed that, because she reached out and gently touched his hand. Her fingers were cool. The touch wasn't romantic. It was grounding, real. "We're not there," she said, "but I feel us moving." Before he could respond, a sound split the air, distant, metallic. Mark was up instantly. He grabbed his rifle, moved toward the main passage. That wasn't wind. Sayla followed without hesitation. She moved like someone used to tension, like muscle memory had returned. They reached the far corridor. One of the airlock doors had been tampered with. Someone tried to override the panel. Mark checked it. Not brute force. A coded signal had been sent, wireless. Precision work. Then they heard it. Allery's voice, faint from the other chamber. "Mama." Sayla sprinted past him. Mark followed, rifle raised. They found Allery, standing at the open end of the chamber. The external panel had been breached slightly, just enough for someone to slip a small surveillance drone inside. It hovered near the ceiling, blinking red. Sayla didn't hesitate. She stepped in front of her daughter, placed both hands out, and stared directly at the drone. The red light blinked faster. Mark took aim, fired once. The drone dropped, sparks spilling onto the ground. He scanned the entry point. "We need to move. They're testing our defenses." Sayla knelt to check Allery. "Did they touch you?" "No," the girl said. "It just looked at me." Sayla stood and turned to Mark. "We won't be able to run far." "Not with her." "I wasn't planning to run," he said. "I was planning to lead them in and cut off their signal." She raised a brow. "You can do that. I worked signal mapping before the war. If I can trace their frequency, I can fry the relay. It'll take me 2 hours to climb to the signal path. But I'll need you to stay here and hold this place down." Sayla didn't hesitate. "I will." Mark checked the power in his weapon, loaded 2 extra cartridges, and slung a small toolkit over his shoulder. Before he stepped out, Sayla stopped him with one hand on his arm. "If you don't come back," she said. "I will." She didn't say another word. She leaned in and pressed her forehead lightly to his, just for a breath. Then she let go. Mark disappeared into the corridor, and Sayla turned back toward her daughter. Her expression had changed, sharper, colder. She moved through the wreck quickly, barricading the weaker points, dragging crates, setting motion beacons Mark had taught her to use. Allery sat quietly, hugging her knees. "Will he come back?" "Yes," Sayla said. "He's not like the others." Then, under her breath, so quiet only the walls might hear it, "He's not afraid of what I am." She stood still in the center of the chamber, eyes on the shadows, body poised not as prey, but as something awakening. The Ray had been known as passive empaths, but when threatened, some were capable of something else: projection. Fear, pain, rage, all pushed outward like a wave. It took everything from them to use it. Selah had never done it before, but tonight she might have to. The wind grew stronger the higher Mark climbed, slicing across the cliffside and howling through the broken vents of old mining rails. His boots scraped along a narrow ledge, crumbling under each step. He reached the ridge just as the last of the sunlight bled out behind the horizon. The signal relay tower stood crooked on a steel skeleton, half buried in slag rock. Rusted, forgotten, but not dead. A faint pulsing light blinked from a control node. Still active, still sending. Mark crouched behind a boulder, pulled out his signal mapper, and watched the feed cycle. The device caught a faint encryption string, military structure, but modified. Not UMC, not local militia. This wasn't a random patrol. Whoever was tracking them knew exactly who they were following. He frowned. The encryption had the Ray root key. Selah's own people? No, not possible. They were scattered, broken. Then who? He rerouted the feed, fed a burst command into the mapper, and set the overload. Come on, he muttered. Burn. The light blinked faster, then died. Below, somewhere in the wasteland, the signal chain went dark. But the damage had been done. Back at the wreck, Selah stood still as a statue in the center of the old Ray chamber. The lights had dimmed again. Allery was hidden behind a storage crate, curled in a blanket, silent. The freighter trembled slightly, metal shifting. Footsteps. Not Mark. Selah's heart pounded. She felt the pressure before she heard it. The creeping echo of boots against steel. A door hissed open. One figure entered. Then two. Humans. Armed. Light armor, polished. They weren't scavengers. They were contractors. Well-fed, well-supplied, calm. Professional. One of them stepped forward, weapon low, voice calm. Selah of the Ray. You're in possession of a stolen minor-class child and under protective custody of an unauthorized human. Stand down. Comply, and the girl won't be harmed. She didn't move. Her eyes were glowing faintly, her hands loose at her sides. You were marked as valuable biological property by the Astra Recovery Initiative. We've been paid to return you. I'm not property, she said. Maybe not now, but you were processed, tagged, sold. The child, too. Another figure moved toward the crate where Allery hid. Selah stepped forward. I said stop. The man didn't. His boots scraped closer. Then it hit them. The air changed. Dense. Charged. The first man staggered. His partner gasped. The third, closer to Allery, dropped to one knee, clutching his head. Selah's eyes glowed brighter. Her hands clenched into fists. She stepped closer, her voice low, steady, almost vibrating. You feel that, she whispered. That's everything they took from me. She projected, not just fear, but memory. Hunger. Chains. The cold of a cell. The weight of a child who wouldn't wake. She pushed it all outward in a wave that hit the men like pressure on the chest. They fell back, stumbling, disoriented. One of them fired blindly. The shot sparked against the wall. Selah didn't stop. Her projection deepened. Controlled rage, not wild. Focused. Deadly. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't flailing. She simply was. And the wreck responded. The walls pulsed with the same light. An echo chamber of her will. The three men collapsed unconscious. And then, the power faded. Selah dropped to her knees, gasping, her skin pale, her breath shallow. Allery ran to her. Mama, I'm here, Selah whispered, barely able to lift her arms. I'm here. The child clung to her, sobbing into her chest. Moments later, boots echoed through the corridor again. But this time Mark emerged, rifle raised, eyes scanning. He saw the bodies first. Then Selah, half collapsed, holding Allery. He ran to her side. What happened? They came for us, she said, voice hoarse. I stopped them. Mark dropped beside her, checked her vitals. Her pulse was erratic, but stabilizing. You used it, didn't you? She nodded slowly. I didn't know I could. He looked at the men. Still breathing. Knocked out. No blood. just overwhelmed. Mark exhaled and sat back on his heels. That wasn't just empathy. That was a weapon. Selah met his eyes. Only if I have to be one. He helped her to the platform, laid her back gently, set a heater pack beneath her spine. You could have run, he said. You didn't. I had something to protect. He paused, then asked softly, just Allery? She looked at him. Really looked. No, she said. Mark swallowed hard. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, quietly, I saw the relay signal. It was using the ray encryption. Someone wants you back. I know. Why? Selah didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to her sleeping child. Because I'm the last of a failed breeding line. They thought I couldn't bond again. They sold me cheap. She looked back at him. But they were wrong. Mark stood still. Not out of confusion. Out of realization. And now they know. Selah reached for his hand. Weak, trembling. He held it without hesitation. I don't want to be valuable to them. I want to be chosen. Freely. You already are, he said. She smiled. Small. Exhausted. Real. They stayed like that until the night deepened. The wreck silent again. The danger passed for now. And in the silence, something between them finally began to take shape. Not because of what she was, but because of what they had chosen to become. Together. The heat packs kept the room tolerable, but the air was still dry, the silence too heavy to feel safe. Selah lay curled on her side atop the makeshift bedding. Her breathing had steadied. Her skin had regained some color, but her body remained drained. What she did, what she projected, had taken more out of her than she let on. Mark sat nearby, cross-legged, quietly assembling a new perimeter sensor with parts from the down drone. His eyes kept drifting back to her. He didn't speak. Neither did she. Allery had fallen asleep beside her mother, her small body wrapped in a blanket. She hadn't asked any more questions, just curled up close and stayed that way, like the world might vanish again if she loosened her grip. Mark finally stood and walked over, crouching beside Selah. He offered her a canteen. She took it with both hands and drank slowly. I didn't know what would happen, she said at last, her voice low. I think they did, he replied. That's why they wanted you back. They're not going to stop, she said. Now that I've awakened it, we'll make them stop. She didn't respond, but her expression shifted, something caught between disbelief and cautious hope. He leaned against the cold wall next to her. You need rest. I've rested enough. She slowly sat up, drawing the blanket higher around her chest. Her breathing remained shallow, but her movements were steadier now, more deliberate. She reached down, gently repositioned Allery without waking her, then turned her gaze to Mark. You're not like other humans I've seen, she said. I've heard that before, he muttered. No, she said. I mean it. You don't act like someone trying to fix me. You treat me like I'm already whole. You are. Selah studied him for a long time, like she was measuring that statement against everything she'd been through. Every time someone had seen her as less. A tool. A product. You saw me in chains, she said, and you didn't look away. You didn't pity me. I saw someone strong, Mark said quietly. I just wanted to be there if you needed someone beside you. She slowly reached out and took his hand. Her fingers wrapped around his with intention, not caution. No tremble. No hesitation. I want this, she said. You're sure? Yes. Mark didn't move closer. He waited. Let her set the pace. Selah leaned in slowly, her face inches from his. Her skin still held that faint glow near her temples, softer now. Her breath warmed the space between them. She kissed him. It wasn't rushed. No heat of desperation. Just a quiet, lingering connection. A meeting of breath, of lips, of choices that had led to this exact moment. She pulled back only slightly, then rested her forehead against his. I haven't been touched without fear in a long time, she whispered. You won't be again, he said. Not by me. She smiled, a small, private expression that didn't reach her lips fully but glowed in her eyes. They lay back side by side. Selah pressed into his chest, his arm around her back. Her body still needed warmth. But this wasn't survival anymore. She wanted to be close. Her hand slid under his shirt, fingers resting against his ribs. Not sexual, reassuring, claiming space. Her space. Mark held her gently, his thumbs stroking slow circles over her shoulder. You don't owe me anything. I know, she said. That's why this matters. They said nothing more for a while. The ship creaked around them. Somewhere outside, distant winds stirred through the canyon. Inside, a small pocket of peace held. Then, Allery stirred. She opened her eyes, saw them together, and mumbled, half asleep. Are we staying forever now? Sayla looked down at her, kissed her forehead. No, little light. But we'll find a place that feels like forever. Allery's eyes fluttered, closed again. Mark whispered, she's stronger than she looks. She had to be, Sayla said. He kissed her temple. So did you. Later that night, after Allery had gone quiet again and the heaters clicked low, Sayla turned to Mark under the thin blanket and whispered, we can't run forever. No, he agreed. We don't have to. We'll fight. If you're willing. I am, she said. And for the first time since he'd found her, Sayla didn't look like someone recovering. She looked like someone preparing. Someone choosing her path. Tomorrow, they would decide how to stand. Tonight, they had found each other. Fully. Freely. Without chains. Morning broke over Varelli's 3 without ceremony. No sunrise, just a dull orange haze pressing against the sky like rust bleeding through clouds. From the edge of the canyon, the horizon looked endless, lifeless. But something had changed. Inside the Ray freighter, the silence felt different. Not fearful, not temporary, just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a decision made. Mark stood by the broken viewport, strapping on his chest rig. He'd already packed supplies, charged every cell, cleaned his rifle. Today wasn't about survival. Today, it was about ending the chase. Behind him, Sayla fastened a cloak over her shoulders, one of his old thermal blankets repurposed into a long, draped wrap. Her movements were calm, focused. The weakness from her projection was gone. What remained was clarity, strength. Allery sat cross-legged near a small crate, chewing a ration bar slowly. She watched her mother without speaking, sensing the weight in the air. Mark turned. They'll come again. Maybe with more men. Maybe with better equipment. Sayla nodded. They want us contained. But we're done hiding. You sure you're ready for this? I wasn't ready the first time, she said. That didn't stop me either. He gave her a look, half warning, half admiration. Then checked the charge on his rifle again. They didn't have to wait long. The warning beacon blinked red. A sound, distant hum, low and mechanical, rippled through the rock. A dropship. Light class. Fast. Mark moved to the freighter's main entry. Allery, stay behind the core panel. Don't move unless your mom, or I say so. The girl nodded silently and slipped into hiding without hesitation. Sayla joined him at the corridor's mouth. This time, she said, we end it. The ship landed hard against the canyon floor. Dust burst upward. 6 figures emerged, armored, moving in tight formation. All human, all armed. Mark raised his rifle. That's not a retrieval team. That's a kill team. They know I won't go back, Sayla said calmly. They're here to erase the problem. One of the soldiers stepped forward, lifted a hand. Amplifier unit on his chest lit up. Step out. Now. You have 60 seconds before we come in hard. Mark's finger tensed on the trigger. We could fight from here. Sayla shook her head. We give them me, they think they've won. We give them us, they understand who we are. Before he could stop her, she stepped out. Alone. The soldiers reacted instantly, weapons trained. Mark swore and followed, rifle up, back to her. The lead soldier barked. You've been claimed by the Astra Initiative under contract. You're tagged property. This is your last. I'm not property, Sayla said. Her voice was louder this time. Clear. Not shouted, but resonant. Every word deliberate. You came for broken woman. But I'm not broken anymore. The soldier lifted his weapon. Mark fired first. Quick burst, center mass. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. Return fire shredded through the air, striking metal and stone. Mark rolled to cover, returning fire with precision. 2 down in seconds. Sayla didn't run. She stood still, then lifted both hands. Her projection didn't erupt. It expanded. Not rage this time. Not pain. Resolve. The remaining soldiers froze mid-motion. Confusion spread across their faces, then fear. Their own uncertainty reflected back at them, magnified. One stumbled. Another dropped his weapon. Mark moved quickly, disarming, disabling. He didn't kill them. He didn't need to. Sayla had already taken away their advantage. Within minutes, the canyon fell quiet again. 6 men down. No bloodshed needed. No more commands barked. Just wind. Mark stood over the last one, who had collapsed to his knees, trembling. "This is over," he said. The man looked up. "You don't know what she is." "I know exactly what she is," Mark replied. "That's why you lost." They left the soldiers behind, disarmed, disoriented. The dropship was intact. Mark set it to detonate on delay. No chase this time. Back inside the freighter, Allery ran into her mother's arms. Sayla held her tightly, whispering something Mark didn't hear. Then she looked up at him. "It's done." Mark nodded. "They won't send more." "They won't need to," she said, "because now we're seen." He stepped close, brushed the dust from her face, cupped her jaw gently. "Where do we go now?" Sayla turned to the child in her arms. Allery looked up at both of them. "Can we find the gardens you talked about, Mama?" Sayla smiled softly. "We'll make new ones." Mark took both of their hands. That night, they left the canyon together. No longer fugitives. No longer fractured pieces of broken lives. A man, a woman, and a child, walking toward a world they hadn't found yet. But they would. And this time, it would belong to them. The air was different here. The wind didn't scream like it had on Varelli's 3. It drifted gently through the trees, stirring the tall grass and rustling the wide, pale green leaves overhead. In the distance, birds, or something like them, called to each other with soft, rhythmic clicks. The sky was pale lavender, cloudless. Mark stood outside the small dwelling they'd built from salvaged ship panels and reinforced ceramic. It wasn't big, just 2 rooms, a working heater, clean water pulled from underground, and a roof that didn't leak. But it was theirs. He ran his hand along the edge of a solar relay panel, checking the output levels. Stable. No signs of storm interference for days. He looked back toward the garden patch, rows of native plants they'd coaxed into growing. Their array root blossoms, soil-hardened grain. Sayla knelt among them, her sleeves rolled up, hands covered in dark earth. She moved slowly, with care, her fingers pressing seeds gently into the soil. The sun caught the sheen of her skin, and her loose silver hair flowed down her back in soft waves. She looked up and saw Mark watching her. "You're staring again," she said, smiling faintly. "I do that. Why?" "Because sometimes I still don't believe this is real." She stood, brushing her hands off on a cloth at her waist. She wore a short, sleeveless tunic made from soft fabric they traded for in the southern camp. Simple but flattering, hugging the shape of her hips and drawing upward in a smooth line over her chest. No armor, no tears, no chains. Just a woman at peace. She walked toward him, and he met her halfway. "You always check the panels first," she said. "Old habit." She placed her hands on his chest and leaned into him. "You know it's safe here." "I know. He exhaled, still not used to relaxing. "You will be," she said softly. "So will I." Mark's arms wrapped around her waist, drawing her closer. He kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then paused, his lips near her ear. "You smell like soil." "I am soil," she said with a smile. "Everything grows from it." Their kiss came slow, unhurried, full of quiet certainty. It wasn't new now, but it never felt routine. Inside the dwelling, Allery's voice called out, "Are you kissing again?" Sayla laughed gently and stepped back just enough to look toward the door. "Maybe," she said. Allery emerged, holding one of her drawings, a charcoal sketch of the 3 of them standing together under a tree. She handed it to Mark. "I made us happy," she said. Mark crouched and took it carefully. "You got my beard right this time." "I added the scar too," she said, proudly pointing to a little line near his eye. Sayla crouched beside them, resting a hand on her daughter's back. "I think this one goes on the wall," she said. They returned inside. The cool interior scented faintly with herbs Sayla had been drying. Allery ran to the small shelf and began choosing a spot to place the new drawing. Mark sat on the edge of their shared sleeping platform. Sayla sat beside him. No words were needed for a while. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He took her hand and laced his fingers through hers. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked. "The way things were before everything fell apart." She shook her head. "No, I miss what we should have had, but not what was." He looked at her. "And now?" Sayla turned toward him, her expression open. "Honest. Now, I feel like I've finally chosen the life I want. The man I want. The version of myself I want to keep." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Then we hold on to it, no matter what." Outside, Allery's voice sang softly to herself while tending the watering jars. Inside, two people who had once been strangers, once survivors, once alone, sat in shared silence. They had found peace not by escaping who they were, but by finally being seen, loved, and free. Forever wouldn't come all at once, but for today, they had everything they needed. The end. YW checkmark.